From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's exchanges and clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
We are recording this episode in the days leading up to Christmas 2020 with the deployment of the COVID-19 vaccines beginning. There is reason for some holiday cheer. The global scientific community developed several vaccines in less than a year, a Herculean effort that seems like a miracle. The medical breakthroughs were made possible not just by the researchers working today, but every single vaccine innovation since Edward Jenner's smallpox vaccine back in 1796. Technology has allowed the medical community to reach across both space and time, to find the data and insights needed to develop treatments, test vaccines, and scale production in a way that fulfills the long-promised potential of bringing together digitization, big data, artificial intelligence, and human ingenuity. As we'll hear from our guest today, Clarivate's Jerre Stead, the idea of centralizing research, ideas, and innovations is a long-established tradition in the scientific engineering and medical communities. It's also ripe for disruption. Clarivate's own history stretches back to publishing of a register of scientific names in 1864. And today, that database, the zoological record, is now online and part of the company's Web of Science. Our conversation with Jerre Stead, Executive Chairman and CEO of Clarivate, on creating the tools that drive innovation, transforming the business of data, and the lessons in leading people that he's picked up along his career heading, listen to this, 11 public companies. That all comes up right after this.
Navigating dynamic markets requires a relentless pursuit of knowledge. Now, join market experts to learn with ICE Education Live. Attend live video training with practical lessons across global asset classes. On-demand modules provide base knowledge. Participants can then attend live training sessions, including group review and tests for certification. We also tailor training for your needs and in-house projects. ICE Education Live courses. Continue your education today.
Our guest today, Jerre Stead, is Executive Chairman and CEO of Clarivate PLC. That's NYSE ticker symbol CCC. Jerre served as the CEO of Churchill Capital Corp until its merger with Clarivate in May 2019. Clarivate is the 11th public company in which he's served as CEO and or chairman, and prior to leading Clarivate, he served as chairman and CEO of IHS Markit, and previously served as executive chairman and CEO of IHS. He also previously led Honeywell Phillips' medical electronics, Square D, AT&T Global Business Communication Systems, NCR Corporation, NCR Japan, Legion Corporation, and Ingram Micro. Jerre, what a resume. Welcome inside the Ice House.
Thanks, Josh. Good to be there.
So in August, Jerre, Clarivate announced the launch of its coronavirus virology and infectious disease, we call it CVID data lake, to support global researchers and policymakers in their efforts to make data-driven decisions that accelerate disease response, prevent and prepare for future pandemics. How did the CVID data lake bring together the different services already offered by Clarivate to help search for a cure?
Great question, Josh. Simple way to say it is we took all the massive data we had, put it on a common platform. And so when we call it a data lake, that's as you know, the current nomenclature, but it's really up in the cloud, and it takes all the massive data all the way back over 50 years, brings it all together, and lets us get in and use it any way we want, anytime. This one was really neat because we gave most of it to the researchers that were doing the work on what was now released with the vaccines. So it was a big win-win for us. Clearly, there's far more than what was needed for the vaccine in that data lake, but that's today the most powerful and actually largest that exists anyplace.
I want to geek out a little bit and go a little deeper into this data lake. The world has been focused on how the COVID vaccine has been developed, but Clarivate's services have been providing the data that scientists and other innovators need to succeed for generations. You mentioned 60 years. In fact, when you visited the NYSE to announce the combination of Clarivate with Churchill Capital, you had the Garfield family ring the bell in honor of a Dr. Eugene Garfield, the original founder of the Institute for Scientific Information in 1960, which was the forerunner of Clarivate's Web of Science group. How did that product develop from the early 60s and become part of the Clarivate family?
Let me just add a bit of color when we did that bell ringing. His sister, who was 92, rang the bell with us. I gave her, because I got a lot of the other gavels, I gave it to her, Josh. She took it home and had breakfast with her friends each morning and did bell ringing, watching the open of the New York Stock Exchange for 2 weeks. So that's as good as it gets. Pretty cool. So it's actually a great question. Her brother, a university professor, almost 60 years ago, and as he did that, he was collecting it manually, and it was being brought in and typed in literally into a data system that then had to be looked at each and every day and updated. What it did then, and of course what we do today, is miles ahead, but that's a collection that today is looked at as the place if you're a journalist, or if you're a researcher, or if you're a publisher, as the place you want to be, because we're the only independent partner that looks at all of those, takes the very best, recommends them. The awards we give out each year to the best researchers in the world are coveted. And what we're able to do today, of course, to manipulate that data versus what Garfield did, is an amazing shift. And it's actually a great example of what is going on with our technology in the world we're in today. And we can do more quicker today than I am sure he ever dreamed or imagined.
How is technology changing those offerings that you have, both in how the data can be used and how it's affected the business model?
Yeah, so just as an example, when we brought the companies together, and as you mentioned, May of 19, we had just started a program we called Singularity, where we were automating with artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of the manual work that had been done for all those years of all the massive data we had, and turning it into information, which today now, in fact, just before I got on with you, I was doing my weekly update with the guy that leads Singularity. We just completed phase 1 today, which now puts us at the very peak of the ability to provide any customer anything he or she wants on almost any research document you can think of, like that. That's versus, just think, like I said, you go back 60 years ago, and it would be call in, ask for, and receive eventually.
Yeah, in paper form, brought by the post. You know?
Literally.
Along those lines, Clarivate publishes a highly cited researcher list that identifies researchers who have significant influence in their chosen field of study. Dr. Gerald Chun has appeared on the list for 3 consecutive years for his contributions to understanding the brain and its diseases. This includes Alzheimer's, which is a disease that your mom suffered from and that you've devoted a significant amount of your personal philanthropy to. I believe some of the COVID vaccines have used research that originally began with Alzheimer's treatments. Do you think medical progress is bringing us any closer to a cure in that area?
I started the Alzheimer's Research Institute in Phoenix 15 years ago. It's the banner Alzheimer's Institute. All of our efforts have been on prevention, not on cure. And we are, Dr. Eric Ryman is the head of it, probably the most, not probably, in fact, is the most acknowledged expert in the world today. And one of the things that's been so interesting, I talk with him 2 to 3 times a month. 5 years ago, there was a group of native Indians in Colombia, a group of about 25,000 of them, that all got Alzheimer's between the age of 45 and 50, 100%. That's where the first testing went on with vaccines, a placebo group and 2 vaccines. The one vaccine eventually had to be stopped because of side effects. After 5 years, and it's all public, there's been articles in the Times and many other newspapers and magazines. After 5 years, 80% of the placebo group had Alzheimer's, less than 1% of that particular vaccine. Now, that's not the same as a prevention for maybe me or you, because it was all based on gene study because of it being a very, very large family, but a huge step forward. We're a long way down today with that, with a joint project with the UK, Canada, and the US. Eric, if he was on the phone, Dr. Ryman would tell you today that we're within years, short years, of being able to have that prevention.
How should a layperson think about what is going to happen in which, and it's in my family as well, that our futures will be a future where Alzheimer's will be prevented? What's going to be happening?
No, it's a great question. It'll be a vaccine that will stop the clutter, to make it simple words, in the brain, 85 to 90% of the time. The other thing is a great question, Josh, because there's been blood tests available for some time that'll now start being released to tell you and me if we're going to have Alzheimer's because it's in our family. They're up to now, it's not been used for simple reasons. Do you really want to know if there's nothing you can do about it? So that'll kick in, a priority system will get set, and then I'm optimistic, quite optimistic, that certainly before the end of the 20s decade, we'll be in a position to take care of 80 to maybe 90% of those of us that would have gotten Alzheimer's. And it's so important because you can appreciate it. Alzheimer's is the only true death disease today. There is no answer, period. So that shift it's so exciting.
I mean, too late for those in my family and for your mom, but I'm curious, how did your parents, long before then, influence your career, and were they Hawkeyes as well?
Yes, they were. They grew up, we grew up together in Iowa. My dad married, it's interesting, my dad married my mom on December 11th, 1941, that week after December 7th. As you may know, statistically, it was the highest number of marriages compared to population in history.
People were getting ready to go off to war and wanted to get it done.
Which he did.
Yeah.
And along with millions of others. And so I actually was born in Maquoketa, Iowa. My dad was stationed in Virginia. We eventually got there. And then when the war finally got over a year later, we came back to Iowa. They were both Hawkeyes, third, fourth generation people, British background, German and Norwegian background. And I was so blessed from a couple standpoints. I had 2 great-grandmothers that were alive and well. One was running a restaurant when she was 96 years old. The other one, Grandma Pfeiffer, was an amazing, her body was gone, but her mind was there. And then I had 2 grandmothers, both who were tremendously influential for me. My mom and dad started after the war the first all-purpose insurance agency in eastern Iowa, meaning whatever you needed as a farmer, they could sell you, independent agent. So they worked, and my quote Nana, which was my mom's mom, kind of ran the show. And she was a very strong Methodist. She was a very great teacher. When I got my paper out, I actually you're supposed to be 10 when you got the route. I was close, so I was 9 and got it. And she was real clear. She taught me, I split whatever I kept after I paid for the papers 3 ways. Third for savings, third for church, third to do whatever I wanted. And it was a wonderful education. And then Grandma Stead was a teacher. She was actually Teacher of the Year in Iowa when she was 80. So those two were very influential. And Grandma Stead, in fact, I can see it here. When I graduated from high school, she gave me a really great thing. It says, "A man wrapped up in himself is a very small package." So I still have that up there, and I've kept it forever. And parents, wonderful people, believed in hard work, great values, like so many people had from Iowa, and just couldn't have been better.
It must have been incredible to have someone like Grandma Stead in your life as a teacher, but at some point, you got to get out of the Stead household. And you and your wife, Mary Joy, both attended University of Iowa after getting married. And I believe you'll be celebrating your 59th anniversary this month. How did you meet on the plains and begin to build a relationship?
We were 14 years old. We'd moved, she'd moved from Bettendorf, Iowa to Maquoketa. I had moved from Delmer, Iowa to Maquoketa. And we met on a bus coming home from a freshman-sophomore basketball game. And actually the only person I ever dated, and vice versa. We got married the day before Mary Joy turned 19 with a Christmas, December 26th Christmas wedding. I'm 10 days younger than her, my favorite time of year when she's older than I am, of course, then. But it was interesting. She had a scholarship in music and education at Northwestern. I had a free ride at Dartmouth to play football and baseball for Bob Blackburn. And we compromised and because we didn't want to do that. And that's how we ended up at the University of Iowa. And it was as simple then, Josh, to get in as you went to the registrar's office with a check and you were there. We lived in a 40-foot by 10-foot trailer for the 4 years almost in college. I worked 40 hours a week and had great jobs. I ran survey crews and did drafting during the week. We had both of our kids there. And it was just, we were coincidentally talking about it with friends last week. Everything was great because we didn't know what we couldn't do. We just did it. And that made it pretty simple.
And your values weren't corrupted by spending 4 years in Hanover and going to Winter Carnival at Dartmouth. So you ended up in a much better place.
And I still tease her about Northwestern because I've been very active there over the years, including being chairman of the board of the Garrett Evangelical Seminary, which is in the middle of Northwestern. So yeah, no, you're right.
And yeah, I think you also made another $5 a week maintaining your boss's yard. So I'm wondering, like, with all of this industriousness of, in your household, is that where you began your routine of getting up at 3:15 every morning to get a run in and some work done before, well, most of us are still sleeping the night away? No,
it was when I got the newspaper route. Newspaper was dropped off at the railroad station by the railroad from Des Moines.
The Register.
Yep. And I'd be there to pick it up and deliver that. I had 42 daily papers and 71 or 72 weekend Sunday papers. And I happened to have the 2 taverns that were in town. And if I didn't have the paper there by 5, it was not a good thing. So that's how I got started. And it's been a wonderful gift. And it did help a lot at the university because I get up my usual time and I go in and do the drafting work before I go to school. So no, it worked. And then I kept, right after we got out of the university was when I started running because for the first time, because I played lots of intramural, etc. I didn't ever want to put on weight. So when I started in 1965, June of 65 at Honeywell, I had to do something for exercise. So I started running and have done that ever since.
So June of 65 is a month before I entered the picture somewhere outside of Boston, Massachusetts. You're at Honeywell. That's NYSE, ticker symbol HON. What was your initial job there, and when did you realize that these aspects of management and leadership were things that you had an affinity for?
Because of grades and being married, et cetera, I had lots of job offers, actually 12 different job offers. And we picked Honeywell for two reasons. One, I traveled all over with the interviews, and I liked Minneapolis. I liked the people at Honeywell. And it was as far away as we could get from my parents and Mary Joy's parents because we had the only two grandkids. So that's why I went there. But the bigger reason, kidding aside, was that I was part of what they called a high talent pool. And when I took the job, I was told that I'll have a year to work through all the different business markets, et cetera, and then I'd get a position. So I started on June 14th, 65. On July 5th, my year was over, literally 21 days, 3 weeks later, because they said, you're now going to be the foreman at the downtown plant for the coil winding group. You have 400 people, 3 shifts. Good luck. So literally. And it was so funny because I thought I had older people work for me when I was running survey crews, but nothing like this. 100% union, Josh, local 1145 Teamsters Union. And the only people on the floor, except me and my partner, Seal, who did all the think back then, everything was time cards, the whole bit.
Yeah.
And we were the only 2 non-union people out of those 400. I had a team called group leaders that got paid literally 12 cents an hour more, but they did the coordinating with the different groups. There was 7 on the first shift, 4 on the second shift, 1 on the third shift. And so I had no clue. The first thing I learned from Seal was that the 3 guys in front of me had lasted less than 2 months apiece. So that I went home that night, told Mary Joy and the boys, I said, we were in a townhouse. We were looking to build a house. I said, let's wait because I'm not sure how this is going to go. So I got them all together. It was the best lesson I've ever had in my life. The next day I got them all together. I said, I have no idea what I should do, but what I do know is I'll do everything I can if you tell me what I should do to make it work. And it worked. And I've always done it that way. I've always surrounded myself with really great people and then helped them accomplish what they wanted to. Wonderful lesson.
So your career starts in the middle of the Johnson years in 65. It's now 1987, and we're at the end of the Reagan years, and you're moving to Square D, where you made a quick impression on the company by setting a fire in a parking lot. What were you burning, and what was the message you're trying to send?
Yeah, so that was pretty funny. Square D, wonderful company, 85 years old at the time I got there, was the leader in residential commercial circuit breakers in the world, et cetera. But 85 years old, very industry oriented. And the third day I was there, this young guy came in, probably at the time he was older than me, but and gave me 2 books, Josh. There was over 400 policies and procedures. He said, you're the only person that gets these. And I said, good to know. So I took them home that night, started reading through them, and realized they were probably the worst weapon I could think of to not let people do their job. So the next day I came back, I took our leadership team out and I burned them in the parking lot to prove a point for our entire organization, which is policies, procedures, processes. You need them, but you need them to be tools to help people be successful. And so that's what we did. I then, with that team, handed out, I think we had 12 buckets of policies and procedures and said, so Josh, you run manufacturing, you get these, think through, start with that you have 100% respect and trust of every person you got. Now tell them what you need to do with policies and procedures to be successful.
I believe, Jerre, that the first company that you actually brought public on the New York Stock Exchange was Ingram Micro. And at the time, it was the largest IPO biotechnology company in history. The 1990s were a period of change for tech in the markets. What was that experience like, and did you take any lessons away from it?
Yeah, it was really great fun. One, it was a fast-growing company. We grew it from, when I got there, it was $8 billion. When I left, it was $32 billion, 4.5 years later. Fastest growing at the time, fastest growing Fortune 50 company in the United States. I learned a lot there. One, very tight margins, Josh, because when you're a service provider, distributor, you don't miss a penny on anything. I learned three things. I relearned again, the only way to make this happen as fast as we were going to grow was to surround myself with really great people, spend my time helping them be successful. Really critical, point one. Point two, it was for us to be global, I was going to have to do acquisitions to grow quicker than we were in Europe and particularly in Asia. So we acquired a company in Australia, acquired a company in China, which was interesting. It was a Singapore public company that I acquired because at that time they had their own company inside of China. So that was the way I got into China. I had a partnership with SoftBank. I was on the SoftBank board with Masasan because didn't want to compete with them in Japan. And that's what he was doing then. He had an incredible machine, had all the Apple products, etc., in Japan. Then we acquired a company, another company in Hong Kong to close that whole loop up, including the acquisitions we made with Europe too. And so that's the place. I made a lot of acquisitions at Honeywell, more at Square D, but it became clearly strategic to be global. I had to make those acquisitions. We learned how to do that really well. And we created a machine. I mean, if you think about growing that fast, we would have 200 to 250 new people on our company team every week. So we had to create a machine that attracted people, got people excited, kept people, trained people, and developed people. We did a couple of interesting things. We had Impulse, which was our own, at the time we were doing a couple million transactions a day, and it was our own inside system. And I had great people working for me, really great ones in the IT organization. And we had to learn how to manage that. So the thing that I'll never forget was sitting actually in this house in 1999, December 31st, if you remember Y2K, not having a clue if we were going to be alive with that whole system the next morning. First one happened to be New Zealand. That went well. Boom, boom, boom. We hit Japan, and the bank that we were doing business with went down. So we stayed back up. I'll never forget that because what we did in 98 and 99 was incredible. We converted everything, brought it all up to speed, didn't miss a beat, and kept growing. And it was great fun. The other thing I continued to learn always is that you treat every person, every place in the world with equal dignity and respect. Mm-hmm. And I do operate with 100% trust of every person that worked in every one of the companies I've led, worked great. Last thing with Ingram Micro is when you scale up that fast, You will make mistakes. If you don't, you're not moving quick enough. And I learned that it was fine. I would applaud people for taking a risk, making a mistake. You can fix anything, Josh. If you make a mistake, you just change priorities, allocate resources, and move on. So that helped me create an environment even faster than of rapid growth.
I mean, I want to talk about speed as it relates to Ingram Micro in another dimension for a second. You mentioned that your parents put out a shingle, I guess, as insurance agents in Iowa. And this sweatshirt that I'm wearing is from Willis Group, which is what I joined in, I guess, 2009. The then CEO, Joe Plumeri, had been named CEO of Willis in late 2000. It had been sort of sitting in private equity for a long time at KKR, and Joe said, I'm gonna bring it public quickly. And people said, what, a couple of years? No, give me 6 months. And he ended up doing that. And I noticed that it took about 5 months between you being named CEO of Ingram Micro and its IPO. This is also, I think, the same time frame used when combining Churchill Capital with Clarivate. Do you think rapid transformations work better than a slow process? What I'm always told inside ICE is, slowness is the enemy of any deal, or time is the enemy of any deal. So you must have been a young man in a hurry back with Ingram.
We always did that, yeah. And I'm a huge believer. Here today at Clarivate, they talked about Jerre Speed, and that's what we try to operate with, and it works. And it worked there at Ingram Micro. A quick side comment, it was so interesting taking them public because we chose to do it the week of the election in '96. My friends at some of the bankers, I'd already had other public companies, obviously. Some of my banking friends, particularly at Morgan Stanley, John Mack was deeply involved with me because we were leading the big one. Said, we should wait to see what's going to happen with the election. I said, no, we're not going to wait because we got to get moving. We got to get started. We were booked 4.5 times what we did with the IPO. And it happened. It happened to be Bob Dole versus Bill Clinton. And I love Bob Dole. He's a national hero. I know him well. But there was no question of what was going to happen. So we just let it rip, and it worked. And I've always done that with every company I've ever led.
You led another company that we're going to get to. It's 2000, Jerre. You join IHS as chairman, but you lay out a condition that you will not be asked to be the CEO. And I'm curious how that worked out for you.
Yeah, because Mary Jo and I moved 23 times over our career. We had just moved, in 95, I was running Legion, went through a semi-hostile takeover, sold the company for $49.50. I was 18 when I got there, sold the company, and we'd only been there 17 months. And Mary Jo said, Josh, any place you want to go is fine with me, and I'll go with you, but we're going to find a home that will fit where we're at. And so that's how we ended up in this house. And that's how we got this house built. And it's been the center of us for since then. So the one thing that's kind of important on this house is that it is the top of the roof is 25 feet above the ground. And Mary Jo, unfortunately, was up there and fell off while I was traveling, blew up her right leg entirely and crushed her back. And so we went through 11 surgeries while I was leading that speed with Ingram Micro. I promised her after, I think, the 9th surgery that when I was done at Ingram Micro, I'd take a rest, do something different. We'd get relaxed together. So the deal was real simple, which was I promised her I would not be CEO. So I was executive chair, and we took it public in November also of, in that case, of 2005. And I did it as executive chair. Turned out that the CEO we had, good person, wasn't going to be able to probably grow as quickly as we needed to. So then I had Mary Joy's permission to step in as CEO. Never break a word with a wife. Ever. Never.
I wonder, if there were any other deals made with Mary Joy between then and 2016, because it's then, I think, that you are working with Lance Ugla to merge IHS and Market to form IHS Market. Recently, Lance, we saw it in the news just 2 weeks ago, agreed to sell IHS Market to S&P Global for the biggest deal of the year, $44 billion, about 2.5 times the market cap of the company's value from when it was formed. As you watched that deal come across the ticker and the news start to bleed out, what were your thoughts on it?
So my thought was, let's see, 15 years, 48 times, not bad return. I've been blessed over the years. I've always given, every public company I've led has done 28% compounded annual return over all these years. That made me so proud. The other thing, and it was a great question that you asked, I think the real measure of our success, like mine, is after I'm gone, have I built a company, have I found the right leaders, and one that's sustainable and keeps getting better. And I've been blessed to be able to do that. And certainly what we did with IHS Market and what Lance did is wonderful.
And now Lance probably made a deal too to take some time off, I think.
And he's going to.
After the break, Jerre Stead, Executive Chairman and CEO of Clarivate, and I are going to discuss how Clarivate, his current venture, is transforming how innovators are accessing the insights and analytics that they need to transform the world. That comes up right after this.
Historical data can offer insight into the direction of markets. Yet data processing, collection, and storage can be challenging and costly. To simplify your data access needs and help find efficiencies, we launched ICE Data Vault, a cloud-based platform that enables you to access tick history for global exchanges, as well as our proprietary data, sourced from our real-time feed. Backtest your trading strategies to assess performance and viability, conduct transaction cost analysis, and support compliance requirements. Input data into surveillance systems to help detect and prevent abusive or illegal trading activities. Access over 10 years of deep tick history across asset classes. Get tick data for an entire market or on an underlying list of instruments. Access additional securities as needed. With flexible delivery options to complement your workflow. Simplify your historical data management with ICE Data Vault.
Welcome back. Before the break, Jerre Stead, Executive Chairman and CEO of Clarivate, and I were discussing his career over 5 decades, leading to becoming the CEO of his current company, Clarivate, NYSE ticker symbol CCC. Jerre, when you stepped down from IHS Market in 2018, you're already thinking about launching a SPAC. What drew you to this investment vehicle that in 2020 is now showing itself to be all the rage?
Michael Klein, who had been on my board at IHS, had called me actually June 14th of 2018 and said, have you thought about doing a SPAC with me? I never wanted to do one unless it was you. Huh. And I said, I don't know, because you need to tell me what it is. Literally, because I had not paid attention to it. And from January through May, I've been helping actually TVG with another business get started for something to do. And it was so interesting. So Michael flew in, he explained to me what it was. And I said, if we do it, here's the way I do it. I'm obviously going to take an information-based business. We have a lot of things that I've looked at over the years. There's a person that's worked with me for 20 years, Cheryl Von Blucher. She's on my board now here. And Cheryl done great research, best I've ever had, great strategist. And we had things we'd looked at that we'd never chosen for different reasons, not to do. And so I said, if we're going to do it, my goal will be to do what we did at IHS and IHS Market, but do it much quicker from what we've learned. And with the change in technology, again, Josh, like we were talking, think about, Nate, I mean, when I started in 2001 with IHS, that's a long time ago technology-wise. So I said, if we're going to do it, we'll do it and do it faster and better. Also defined pretty crisply, if you go back and look at the 4F that we filed, you could almost figure out exactly which was going to be fined in other IHS. We raised $1.2 billion in 2 days. We took $690 of it and put it aside, obviously, as a SPAC. Cheryl and I happened to be in London that day, visiting F&B, Patrick Healy, one of my good friends, the CEO there. We were talking about 2 platforms that he owned. And in that conversation, I get a call from Michael saying, Jerre, Onyx just called me to see if we'd be willing to talk to them about Clarivate. And I laughed. Said I had a handshake with Jim Smith in 2012 to acquire what became Clarivate, with one exception. And Michael remembered.
It was then the intellectual property and science business of TR, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
And Michael remembered it because he had been on my board. I actually had the board ready to meet and give approval if Jim got the handshake confirmed by his board. So I said, would we talk to him? Absolutely. So we actually stopped the travel we planned, came back, met with them at dinner, October 14th, 2018, Onyx, and they were representing Barron's. There were 6 of us at the dinner that night, and it was clear that there was an opportunity to do something that could really help change the world. And I don't want this to sound silly, but one of the things I had said to Mary Joy to do this one again, by the way, she calls it my hobby.
It's good to have hobbies that, multiply by vast multiples over a couple of years.
If that's what she wants, it works. So what happened was it was so interesting that night because I could just feel this thing was going to play. I mean, when you do stuff as long as I've done it, so you knew we had a great opportunity to do it, but then we had an enormous amount of work to get done. We announced it on January 14th of 2019, closed on May 14th, and went public, as you reminded us, on May 15th on the NYSE. And worked through that. We did a couple things that I felt were critical. If you look over my career, you'll see that when I was CEO of a company, I've never sold any shares. I've gifted 90% of them to charity, but I've never sold a share while I was CEO. So I said, one of the things that'll help us a lot is if I say, I'm going to be locked up for 3 years with all of the shares that I've been granted as part of the SPAC, which we did. I think that's started to change the way that works now, for the better, by the way. Mm-hmm. I've always operated that way, Josh, which is everything we do has got to be a return that I'm at risk for any return I get if I don't deliver for the share owner. So we did that. We got started, worked hard to get things ready to go. As I said, closed on May 14th, took over as CEO. And I've never enjoyed this, and my team knows it. This is the most fun I've ever had. One, because we're getting a lot done, we're getting it done fast, but to be in the center of end-to-end solution, actually the only one in the world today for research, and to be able to help with life science and make an incredible difference, to be able to manage IP for companies all over the world better than anybody's ever done. And then with the Web of Science for universities and academia and government, that's something I love doing. I've loved every company I've ever led, but this one is making a real difference. And of course, my affinity to helping from a life science standpoint is huge. So it's just been it's been great fun, and we're just getting warmed up.
Just getting warmed up, Jerre. I mean, for those initial months of 2019 until it went public in May, this week, for example, Churchill Capital 5, the fifth SPAC to come out of the group that you worked with on the original Churchill Capital Corp, listed on the exchange. This year has also seen several successful SPAC combinations. How does, based on this phenomenon that you had to ask, well, what's a SPAC when it was first introduced to you? What's been your experience of how a SPAC merger differs from your other experiences coming on as a new executive or acquiring a company?
Yeah, it's a great question. What it did for us was help us get the Onyx deal done, Clarivate. We had a platform that we could put their company on instantly. And that's a very big deal, Josh. They were probably 2 years away at least from being able to do it. So what they got is me with 38, 39 years of public experience, and they got me with a platform that was already in place. So that to me is invaluable. And it gives me, the other critical point of it, it gives me currency to continue to do the kind of acquisitions that need to happen with any company I've ever led.
Well, 38 or 39 years of public experience can't prepare anyone for a year that is affected by the coronavirus. I mean, we're in uncharted territory here. And over your career, you've acquired and integrated over 200 companies. But this year, Clarivate began integrating the Decision Resources Group just as COVID hit. How did your first remote integration go after the 39 years of experience?
Wonderful question. It was, I was so proud. We had everything ready to go because I travel 300,000 plus miles a year so I can touch everybody and be with them. And all of a sudden that blew up. We closed on February 28th, and we had the whole world shut down by March 15th. So everything we did had to be changed and rethought of. I've never been prouder of a team that's been able to pull that off. Literally, I was just on a call before I got on with you of our digital workforce change that we've made and are building on for the future. All of what we've learned in these last 10 months. And I was probably more concerned about any acquisition I've ever done, merger-wise, when I kept thinking through, wow, this has got to be entirely different. Clearly, again, without the technology that you and I are using right now, none of it could have happened. If this was 5 years earlier, I'm not sure how it would have played out. But we were able to do it. Our DRG acquisition is done, boom, over. We had our final review meeting actually earlier this week with the integration team. And I would give us remarkably high marks. And I'm a pretty high goal setter. So just couldn't feel better about what we accomplished.
So this year you're overseeing 9,000 employees needing to move into this remote working environment. How did the process go, and was there an impact on the company's output or business as a result?
I'm blessed again to have wonderful people, and Randy Harvey, who was my CTO, he and I and 2 or 3 others sat down and said, what do we got to do? Because we've got a lot of people in India, all of whom had workstations, not laptops. So in 2 weeks, we equipped all those people with laptops. We had the internet providers at our offices signed up all of our people to be able to get internet at home. We did that all around the world. We set up 24/7 care centers, of course, because now suddenly you don't get to just say, hey, fix my laptop if it's not working. So we changed everything and did it in about a 4-week period, and then got smarter each day as we move forward. we were just commenting on the call before, as I walk out of 2020 now and go into 2021, it's giving us an opportunity to change the way we do business forever. To your point, productivity is higher than it's ever been. By the way, including me. Like I said, Josh, I traveled 300, 400,000 miles a year for 40 years. I haven't traveled. I've had two really wonderful things happen. One, I've had dinner with Mary Joy every night since February 29th. Never done that since college. And even in college, then we didn't used to have dinners. We both studied. So it's been wonderful from that standpoint. But the other standpoint is I've always run and stay in really good shape. I'm probably in the best shape I've been in 25 years, because the travel you forget. When you're as used to it as I am, you just forget how worn out it gets you. And that's just a different world today. So that's been the blessing for me. But what we've learned then and where we're going today, we just had a review of the next steps we want to take now. We are downsizing, as you would expect, our real estate footprint a lot around the world. We'll go from about 80 offices to 40. And in fact, we'll be lights out on 40 of those offices December 31st. We're setting up module centers. So because people need, the one thing, we've done a lot of surveys. I do every other week, all hands. We did one yesterday, Q&A with all of our colleagues around the world. And one of the things, and we do, like I said, a lot of surveys, 91% of our people felt we were doing the right things with what we've done from working from home. But loneliness becomes a real, I get my energy from people. I'm learning to get it through a laptop, but it's an amazing change. So we've set up, out of those 40 offices we'll keep, we'll have modules that people can go to that are closer to their homes. So we never hook people up again with so many of our folks in India do, pick your number, but 2.5 hours a day travel back and forth. We'll never do that again. It's worked remarkably well. The ability to do all the things we've done is just incredible. And productivity, ingesting all the data is up, stays up. Output is highest ever. User uptime is highest ever. So I just couldn't be happier. And the other thing I learned, because I know you know, we also did our largest acquisition with CPA. And that one I actually started on February 12th of this year, having no clue, again, what was going to happen. We closed on that one October 1st. We did that one 100% remote, Josh. All of the negotiations, all of the due diligence, everything was done like this. And we were more efficient than we've ever been before.
Now, that's a view and a strategy that I think my ultimate boss, Jeff Sprecher, Chairman and CEO of Intercontinental Exchange, might take some exception with. And he's talked a lot on the analyst call after we announced this $11 billion acquisition of Ellie Mae, that, even amid the pandemic, he had to put on his mask, get on the plane, go out to California to kick the tires of the company that he was buying, to look the people that he was going to be working with in the eye, to get to know them in a way, frankly, more than you and I can do on these screens. So how do you, I'm curious, how do you come away with a meeting like this with a sense of that human connection to say, not only does the due diligence line up, not only do the decks make sense, not only do the numbers work, but I have a real sense of this person and this management team that we're going to be merging with?
I would have been in 100% agreement with him had I not been going through the DRG acquisition. And even then, if you think what happened, I met with Leonard Green February 12th about acquiring CPA, and I met with him one other time. That was it. To your point, the top two members of their team and their great company flew out to Scottsdale. We set social distance, 8 foot with masks for 4 hours to talk through everything. I wouldn't have done it, and they wouldn't have done it without that 4 hours. Now, it was interesting because as they walked out, one of them, John, a great guy, reached to grab my hand to shake it. And I pulled away and I said, we'll have a day that we can shake hands. But I think, honestly, had we not done that, we couldn't have pulled the rest off. The only thing, I gain more respect every day because we've also done 4 tuck-ins, including the one with Korea last week, that we've done all of that remote too. When you set your mind to doing something, you can do it. And I can tell you right now, if someone asked me, I'd say this guy, Josh, is a great guy. He's one I wish I knew better. And he's a straight shooter. And I can do that, like I'm sure you can too with people today. So in deference to Jeff, I understand, but I've done it that way and would be hesitant to do it again.
As we wrap up, Jerre, as technology continues to remove the effective distance, just as you were describing the way this year has gone down for you and your team, what impact will that have on innovation and bringing products to markets? Again, this tension of people in a room around a whiteboard arguing, and coming up with creativity that, you think is only possible by sort of people face to face, even social distance. They're doing it remotely. How do you see it working going forward?
I think these remote locations that we'll have set up all over the world are critical because that does give us the extra energy level with people. I will say this, like I said, the productivity is higher than I could have ever guessed, highest I've ever seen. Innovation, I'm very proud of everybody and what we've done. We introduced more new products in Q3 and Q4, Josh, this year than have been done in 20 years before with Clarivate. So we've done it. The unknown to me yet, and hopefully I will stay unknown, is if it went too long, what happens? Do people get too burned out? We've made sure we provided our folks with, as I'm sure most great companies do, with all the mental health support we can give them, et cetera. But that's the thing I'm eager to get behind this, because now we've learned, and that's what we talked about the digital first workforce, is we'll be more flexible than ever before, which is critical. I feel good about that. And yet we'll have the ability for the colleagues to get together when they want to.
In addition to some of the big deals and big companies and big opportunities we've been talking about in our conversation today, Jerre, with some of your whatever extra time you have between that and Dinners with Mary Joy and the running, you've also funded dozens of startups over your career. How involved do you like to be in these investments, and what are some of the big ideas percolating at the startup level that you're excited to see scale?
Great question. I tend now to focus on things that will make a difference medically. Not tend to, I've done it on purpose, Josh. And so there's one that you should watch. It's called Farapulse. We started, this is a great example. I was at the University of Iowa on one of the boards I'm on, and a young guy who had helped get scholarship there, chemical engineer, came in, and we had breakfast together, and he said, do you know that I just won with a group of people the Rice Entrepreneurial Award this year? And I said, you're what? I mean, because that's Mecca, right? Turned out, very sharp young doctor that had an idea. And long story short, I said, we're going to take this one public someday. And so I funded him, hired a wonderful guy, Alan Ziegler. That one is at the point where it won't end up going public. It'll be bought by one of the really big guys that do this. And it's going to change the world. Not going to is. It got provincial approval this week with the FDA. it will be the first non-invasive electrical adjustment for the heart that's ever existed. They've been accurate 100% of the time, Josh, 100%.
Sits on top of the skin, or?
It's done from the outside in, yeah. And
Wow.
it's so exciting to see. Doctors will be able to do 5 or 6 a day instead of 1 or 2 of the fibs today, and 100% accurate. So that one was a dream and a doctor. The one thing I feel bad about, a couple of years after we started it, he called me, he said, Jerre, I want to sell some of my shares. And I said, no, you don't. You don't want to sell shares. He said, no, I do. I got to finish, doctor. So I bought shares for him. I'm going to give them back to him, the ones I bought, because this one's a grand slam home run. It's multi-billions. So that's the kind I like doing. Flip side, another one that we just started also happens to be in healthcare, as a young group of folks out of San Diego who are starting, because of COVID, to rethink how to manage a hospital. And all, as you can imagine, all software. That's a fun one, may work. Probably my favorite is a company that, it's a long story and I'll make it really quick. MD Online was the name of the company. I met the guy because of a friend, said, yeah, I'm going to start it. I'm going to fund it for you. I had him, Josh, call Mary Joy. Bill Barzak is his name. I think he was 3 or 4 times winner of the E&Y fastest growing company. I had him call Mary Joy every 2 weeks for payroll. And he had to explain to her how he was doing with the project. And I did that because I wanted Bill to understand, which he learned beautifully. We sold that, I think, for $250 million 5 years later. And every person in that company got shares from it. So every one of those that I've done that way, this 29th one, there's 4 that failed. And you actually learn more from the 4 that fail about what you should have done different than the 25 that made it. But I love doing it. I try to stay as far away as I can from them and let them call me, because they're going to make it. And I've done that, and so proud of them. That's just so fun to see. And I love creating jobs.
Have you ever quantified how many jobs you've created over the course of 41 years as a public company CEO?
Actually, it was interesting. Jim Smith I met with just before he retired, because I've known him so long. Think the role of him at Thompson. Jim had someone calculate how much equity and funds I've raised over the years for shareholders. It's a big, big number. So that got me thinking about what you said. So I can tell you, but I don't know exact turnover of each company, but I can tell you it's well north of 400,000.
Amazing. And and after all that, we're talking, into your 5th decade. Is there another chapter beyond Clarivate?
Well, I have a new goal now. Lance, that was 44 billion. Okay. I've got to get to 45 billion with Clarivate before I'm ready to think about anything next.
All right. Gauntlet thrown down. This is going to get it. We're going to send the link of this to Lance and see what he thinks about it, because he'll have to go in for 46. Jerre, thanks so much for joining us inside the Ice House.
My pleasure, Josh. And thank you very much. Great to be with you. Take care.
Thank you. That's our conversation for this week. Our guest was Jerre Stead, Executive Chairman and CEO of Clarivate, NYSE ticker symbol CCC. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. And if you got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, email us at icehouse@theice.com or tweet at us at Icehouse Podcast. Our show is produced by Pete Ash with production assistance from Stephen Romanchik and Aaron Wolf. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the library at the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.